Hello everyone and welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop. This is Colin and today we're going to do a top 10 list. This one is going to be the top 10 solo Euro games. Yeah, Euro games. If you guys know me, I don't play a ton of Euros, but there are some that I do really enjoy and I've got a list of 10 of them. So I thought, why don't I share it with you guys? I've actually had quite a few people ask for this, which I find kind of interesting because I don't really play a ton of Euros. But hey, why not? There is one that's not on this list, I'm going to tell you right now, that I think would be. I just haven't gotten to learning the rules, and that's Gaia Project. I have it, it's back here somewhere, but I just haven't gotten to learn the rules. With that, let's jump in. Orleo Invasion, designed by Inca and Marcus Brand, published by DIP Games, is a 1-to-5 player cooperative or competitive medieval worker placement / bag building board game. To play the game solo, you can play one of the 3 solo-specific scenarios included in the expansion, or you can play the invasion scenario, which is the cooperative scenario. I personally enjoy the invasion scenario the most for both solo and cooperative play. You'll recruit different types of workers to your city, such as knights, farmers, craftsmen, and even the monks, and obtain goods such as grains, wines, cheese, and brocade. In the co-op scenario that you can play solo, you will have 6 group objectives and a personal objective you'll need to complete within the allotted rounds. If you do so, you are ready for the invasion into Orleans and win the game. Why is this game good solo? Well, there are 3 solo-only scenarios in this expansion, but really my favorite way to play solo is the invasion co-op with 2 boards. And that's just because each time you play them, they're so different. When you play the solo scenarios, the events that happen are always the same. And so after you've beaten it, it kind of feels like, why are you playing it again? But the invasion scenario, you'll have different events, you can do different personal objectives, really like that. The solo scenarios ramp up in difficulty, with the traveling salesman being the most difficult, and the invasion scenario has different levels of difficulty as well. You can even choose a harder or easier personal objective. This provides the game with some more replayability, because I would say that's probably one of the weakest points of Orleans, looking at it from a solo perspective. Also, the components, you guys, I love how this game looks and how it feels as you play it. It is just aesthetically pleasing. And finally, of course, there is an actual win or loss objective. This is not a beat your own score, and I appreciate that. I do have a solo playthrough of all of these solo scenarios and the co-op version with my wife on the channel if you're interested. Now I'll say this game is not for you if you're not into dealing with bag randomness. There'll be times when you don't draw that monk that you need even though you have 5 of them in the bag, and this can be frustrating. So if you're used to playing Euros and you're looking for very, very little luck to no luck, that might bug you a little bit. If you're looking for a game you can play 20 plus times back to back, this is not it. There's some farther down on this list that are like that, but this one is one of those where I'll pull it out every 1 or 2 months, play it once or twice, and then put it back away. At the Gates of Loyang, designed by Uwe Rosenberg and published by TMG, is a 1-to-4 player competitive trading game where you plant vegetables to fulfill orders and pay cash for victory points. In the solo game, you are trying to surpass the 17 points for a good game. Each round you will draft a couple of helpers you can use to assist you with your vegetables, as well as take some orders that you believe you can fulfill. Each order fulfilled will give you a certain amount of cash that you can either spend for more vegetables or you can spend for those precious victory points at the end of the round. The solo game is a beat your own score, so you try and score as many points as possible. So why is this game good solo? Well, one of the big things is the length of the game. Although it is a puzzly game and it is a brain burner, it's really not that long of a game. I can set it up, play it, and take it down in under 45 minutes. I really love the engine building in this game. You begin the game by producing one vegetable a round, but by that final round, you're going to be producing 4 or 5 different vegetables. You're going to be paying off different orders and getting additional cash, getting victory points, purchasing more vegetables and planting them. You're just going to be doing all this stuff, and all it starts with is a single vegetable. I love how that feels when you do that. My favorite part of the game is the puzzle that you will only see in the solo game. How the cards show up for purchasing and how you set them up between rounds is really cool, because you'll set them up in these different rows, and then depending upon which ones you purchase, other ones will fall down and become cheaper for you to purchase, so you can kind of play around with that and make it so that the cards that you want are cheaper, or you'll have to wait rounds until they are cheaper to purchase them. The game itself looks stunning at the table. All the small little veggie meeples, the cards, the game overall just kind of pops on the table. And finally, it is a brain burner. I love those solo Euro games where I can sit and think for 10 minutes and try and strategize as best I can, only to have it completely change when new cards and new orders show up. I do have a solo playthrough of this one on the channel if you're interested. Check it out. I will say this game is not for you if you don't like that all of the scoring is based purely on money. This means you could have a great engine of veggie building, but if you don't have the best orders, you won't make enough money or cash to get a good score. Also, the scoring in this game is tough. I almost always seem to score the same amount, which is 16. One under the amount that considered a good game. It can be frustrating because it's going to be hard for you to compare your plays of the game, because it's going to feel like you're getting the same score over and over again. Also, this is a beat your own score game, so you're really just looking to try and best yourself, which for some people doesn't cut it for a game. Glass Road, designed by Uwe Rosenberg and published by Mayfair Games, is a 1 to 4 player competitive city building game where players work to build the best plot of land with the most victory points. In a solo game, you will play 7 rounds, each consisting of a different number of specialists you can choose to help you build your city. After the 7th round, you'll count up your points and compare it to your previous plays of the game. Why I enjoy this game solo is, first and foremost, it's quick. This is one of those Euro games that I feel is almost too quick, but overall I find this is good as I can play it multiple times in less than an hour. I really like the specialist mechanic. This is very interesting for solo, and it adds a bit of luck and excitement to the solo game. Since you cannot choose which of the specialists you'll play first, as you'll shuffle them up and draw them one at a time, you have to think about if a specialist would still be useful even if you play it at the beginning of your round or of your turn versus at the end of your turn, when you can actually use both actions on the card instead of only one. The game has a ton of replayability, and a lot of that has to do with all the different buildings that are in the game. And you'll see only maybe a fifth, if that, each time you play it. Those buildings are the main ways that you can develop your strategy, so each time you play you can have vastly different strategies and find different synergies within the game. And this is not solo specific, but the resource wheel is one of the biggest reasons I love this game. I feel it is one of the coolest ways to track your resources, and how you make brick and glass with all of your resources and it automatically makes that brick and glass. It's so cool because sometimes you don't even want it to do it, but it does it, so you have to plan on keeping one of your resources low enough so it doesn't move the wheel. It's so cool. I love how even holding your resources is a puzzle. I do have a solo playthrough of this one on the channel if you're interested. Now, this is not for you if you're looking for a Euro game that's not a beat your own score, because this is a beat your own score. Also, there's more luck than you'd think in this one because of the random shuffle of the specialists and of course the buildings that show up. So I would say of all of the Euros on here, this one has more luck than most. And finally, some people have a hard time conceptualizing that resource wheel. They don't really understand, well, why am I making brick? Why do I have to make glass? It doesn't totally make thematic sense, and so if that's something that's going to annoy you, you might just want to skip this game. Santa Maria, designed by Elif Svensson and Christian Amundsen, published by Aporta Games, is a 1 to 4 player competitive dice drafting, tile laying, happy point competition. In a solo game, you will establish and develop your colony by placing tiles on your home board and activating them with dice or coins. As the game progresses, you will produce resources, form shipping routes, send out conquistadors, and try and improve your religious power to recruit monks. At the end of the game, if you can score 100 or more happy points, you've had a good game. You can then compare your score to your previous plays to see if it was your best. One of the reasons I like this game solo is because of the mechanics themselves. I love dice drafting and I love tile laying, and this game has both. And you get to play it solo. Awesome. Also, the juicy decisions. At the start of the game, you're going to have essentially nothing and need to figure out how you're going to fill your entire board with useful actions. Do I try and make certain rows really powerful with tons of items that I can gain? But then if I don't roll a die number that matches that row, it could be totally useless. So do I spread out my different items across my board? I love all the choices that you have. The game is a point salad. There are so many ways to make points. You can take totally different strategies and find different ways to make points all the time. I love that. For a Euro game, this one has the least amount of components on the list. Makes it easier to set up and play. I don't know though why they made the happy points individual cardboard chits though. I don't know why they did that. I do have a solo playthrough of this one on the channel if you're interested. Now this may not be for you if theme is important. I feel like the theme here is kind of bland. It's nothing that really gets me excited about the game. And it is a beat your own score solo. And finally, because there's so many different ways to score points, you can be prone to AP. If you ever play this with my wife, you'll understand that. Atlantis Rising, designed by Galen Siskel and published by Z-Man Games, is a 1 to 6 player cooperative game where players are one of the citizens of the stricken island Atlantis. In a solo game, you'll choose between 2 and 6 citizens to try and save the island before it sinks into the sea. Your goal is simple: build the 10 components of the Mystic Portal before the entire island is lost at sea. While you are building, the Athenians are also attacking the island and causing it to sink into the sea. You must send some of the citizens to the shores to protect the island from these invaders. You win the game if you build all 10 components before the island sinks. Why is this game good solo? Well, the game does a great job of melding worker placement and theme together. As you flip over those tiles, you feel the island itself sinking, yet you can still plan and strategize due to the worker placement portion of the game. I also love that this game has a win-loss objective. Hey, if there's no more places to place your workers, yeah, you did. The game is all about mitigating risks between the Athenians that are attacking you and somehow sinking portions of your island, which I haven't figured that one out from a theme perspective, and the island tiles themselves sinking due to the flood cards. You need to find a way to build those 10 components of the mystical portal in order for the Atlanteans to survive. I've got to say, this is one of the coolest looking boards I've played on. Seeing you physically flood the tiles by flipping them over makes for a very visual representation of what is happening. You can feel that the island is flooding. I do have a solo playthrough of this one on the channel if you're interested. Now this one's not for you if you want a really difficult Euro game. Once you figure it out, it isn't incredibly challenging, but the more characters you play with at the harder levels, the harder the game is. I would never play this game solo with just one character. You're going to need at least 2, but I suggest at least 4 if you're going to play solo. Finally, the game is out of print, so it's hard to find, but I do know a second edition may be coming, and I will make sure to give you more news on that once I know more. Kepler 3042, designed by Simone Cerruti Sola and published by Renegade Games, is a 1 to 4 player competitive resource management space exploration game. In a solo game, you commandeer one of the colonies and work to explore, colonize, exploit, and terraform planets of the Milky Way using the available technologies. Each round you'll choose a single, that's right, a single action with a potential of 2 bonus actions to try and score as many points as possible. The solo game does have 5 different campaigns in the box. If you can complete the mandatory objectives and score enough points, you win the game. This game is great for solo, first of all because of the campaigns themselves. You only can play campaign in the solo mode, and there are 5 that come in the box, which is pretty awesome. Each one will provide you with a specific objective, such as you have to terraform a certain amount of planets and an amount of points you need to score at the end of the game in order to move forward. I also just really love this theme. It's space exploration 3X style, so there is no extermination, and yet it still is a Euro space game. I don't often think of space as a place that has a lot of Euro games. I think of it more as an Ameritrash type of game, so it's kind of fun to see a nice Euro that's within space. Now I mentioned that you have literally 1 action you can take per round, and that means this game is tight. It may be almost too tight. Every single action counts. You only have so many things that you can do, and you need to do them at the right time to get the best benefit. It is challenging, and if you do something that you really shouldn't have done at a specific time, it will punish you. The rounds in a solo game are super duper quick. Even though there are 16 of them, they will fly by. This is because you only do 1 action per round. If you do want to do a bonus action, you'll have to burn resources that you hardly ever will be able to get back, so you need to be very careful when you decide to do bonus actions. So much of the game is deciding when those bonus actions are worth it and when they're not. Now I'll say this game is not for you if you're looking for different faction abilities. For whatever reason, they made every faction type have the exact same abilities, aka no abilities. And so it's a bit of a bummer because it would have been fun if you could try the campaigns with different colonies, but it's not going to matter. They all have the exact same 0 abilities to start with. The board is also really big with tons of empty space, which totally makes thematic sense, but it may be difficult to fit this on a regular size table. Some people have mentioned that the game feels like it should be 4X, but it's only 3X, so if you are looking for a 4X game, you might want to look somewhere else. And finally, I'll say that this game kinda still feels like a beat your own score, except that the campaign does give you a number that you need to score at or above, and an objective. It still kind of feels like a beat your own score. A Feast for Odin, designed by Uwe Rosenberg and published by Z-Man Games, is a 1-to-4 player competitive Vikings economics game where players will hunt, gather basic material, develop buildings, buy ships, and raid settlements. In a solo game, you'll play to score as high as you can, although 100 is considered to be a good score. The game lasts either 6 or 7 rounds, depending on if you play the quick game or the regular game. Much of the game consists of worker placement actions, but there's also an element of Tetris in the game, as you try and cover up negative points on your home boards and any islands that you discover. This game shines for me in solo play because there are just so many options. I could just sit there staring at the action board for hours, and I'm not even kidding, like hours, and try and think up a strategy. It's really hard to do that in multiplayer, especially because if you're planning on something and someone takes that spot, you have to then rethink everything that you're going to do. So I actually feel like this game almost works better on a solo side than on a multiplayer side. I do feel like the game has this really cool twist for solo play where after you've played round 1, you leave all your workers that you've placed out on the board and you play with another color for round 2. So you've essentially blocked areas on the board for that next round. After round 2, then you grab all the workers that were there from round 1 and you leave the ones from round 2. So once again, you cannot take those actions multiple times in a row. I like that additional little puzzle. The theme of the game is really cool, and who doesn't love pillaging and plundering for goods that you lay in the grass for points? Yeah, that part doesn't really make thematic sense, but I do like how you're pillaging and plundering and raiding to gain goods, but then for some reason you throw them on the ground. I think what I appreciate the most about this game is the depth that I feel as I play it. I know that no matter how many times I play it, I could still come up with a better strategy than the one I tried the last time. Not many games can do that for you, but this one does it in droves. I don't have a solo playthrough of this one, but Slickerdips does, and he does a great job, so make sure to check that out. Now this game is not for you if you don't play well in a sandbox, because this is all a sandbox. There's a huge sandbox full of options and choices that no one's going to tell you what to do, and you're just going to have to decide and go with certain actions. But that can be way overwhelming, and you might just sit there thinking, I don't even know where to begin. Also, the game is a beat your own score, so playing it solo, you're just looking for a high score value. And then lastly, there's just so many components of this game. So if you don't have a lot of space, this game might not be for you. Anachrony, designed by Richard Amon, Victor Peter, and David Teruzzi, published by Mind Clash Games, is a 1 to 4 player competitive game where players compete for being the ultimate race that survives the impending doom of a meteor hitting the Earth. In the solo game, you play against the Chronobot, who scores points and uses his own logic board, and a die roll to determine actions each round. The solo AI uses an interesting mechanic where the board has movable numbers on it. Each time the bot selects an action, you move the specified numbers to the next location on the board. This allows the bot to behave quite differently each time you play the game. Why do I like this game? First of all, theme. If you enjoy time travel, you're gonna enjoy this game. The simple idea of borrowing from your future self is quite awesome, and yet provides you with potential negative consequences based on how often and how much you borrow. Love that. And then whenever you pay it off, you get victory points. So cool. The components. This is a big draw to this game, especially if you have the minis, which are totally not needed, but I think are a must-have in this game. Because when you place out those mechs and you've got a huge mech that you place out on the board, and it's an awesome looking mini. You'll see it in the playthrough. Totally cool, and really makes you get into the theme of the game. So why is Anachrony good solo? Well, first of all, the AI, and that's the biggest reason. As an avid solo player, you get used to playing against, dummy players, where the AI does one of a couple actions and they do it over and over again. Well, this AI uses this logic board, which provides for much more variability and unknown. Will the Chronobot take your next action? What's it going to do? But at the same time, because you can have multiple numbers on the same spot on the logic board, you might know, well, it's more likely they're going to do this because 2 out of the 6 sides of the die, they'll do this action. And I love that because it's just like when you play a real person. You kind of know what they're going to do, but you don't know for sure. And sometimes it's more obvious than others. I love it. Thinky. So actions in this game are super quick, so it provides you with very quick and streamlined play, yet the decisions are juicy and difficult. And so planning is quite involved, and it makes a great solo because of it, because you can sit there and plan, and you don't have to worry about other people sitting around waiting for your turn to end. Replayability. So from a solo perspective, there's an easy, medium, and hard solo mode, and there are 4 factions, each with 2 different types of leaders. You do the math, that's tons of different replayability, and each time you play, the bot's going to do different things, and you can do different things. So I really like this game and its replayability for solo specifically. I do have a solo playthrough of this. If you're interested, feel free to check it out. Now, this game's not for you if you're not into Euro games or worker placement, because that's essentially what it is. If overproduction bothers you, that might annoy you in this game, because you don't need the minis, you don't need the nice components in a Euro game, but you have them here. If you're a nincompoop, you don't like this game. I'm just kidding. That was just a joke. If you want to just score points, if you don't want to just score points for the solo game, that's all you're doing here is you are just scoring points, but you are trying to beat the Chronobot, so you do have that going for you. But it is just a point scoring system. Dinosaur Island, designed by Jonathan Gilmour and Brian Lewis, published by Pandasaurus Games, is a 1 to 4 player competitive park building game where players create their own Jurassic Park, inclusive of human-eating dinosaurs. In a solo game, you have specific solo objective cards that, depending on when you complete them, provide you with a certain amount of victory points. In the game, you will gather DNA to breed new dinosaurs, attract visitors to your parks through rides, foods, and dinosaur exhibits, and keep your security level high enough that those dinos don't eat all of your patrons. At the end of the game, you tally up your victory points and compare them to your previous plays. One of the first reasons I like this game solo has to do with the objective cards. Having these provides you with a purpose for the actions at the beginning of the game and can help you lay out the storyline of your specific park. Trying to complete one objective card around is quite a challenge, but it's quite fun to pull off and you get some extra victory points. I also really love the theme. I mean, Jurassic Park, dinosaurs, yeah, enough said. I do love how the different phases work in the game. The DNA phase where you're trying to get DNA, so you're using your scientists, and then if you don't use all your scientists, you can go ahead and use them at the next step, which is the worker phase, where you're sending out all of your workers into your park to make sure all of the patrons inside your park are getting what they need. This game is just plain fun. There really is no other way to describe it. I get so excited when I can convince more patrons to come to my park, and I hope they don't get eaten by those dinosaurs that I've bred. Unless, of course, I have a hooligan show up. I wish that the dinosaurs would eat those little hooligans. Besides the overall color of the game, I would say the Dino Meeples are pretty sweet, and the specialists can really change the game up and give you tons of different ways to score points. Now, this game is not for you if you're not looking for a beat your own score game. Once again, you're just trying to score as high as you can. And also the color palette can be a little bit crazy. There's lots of pink. That might also be a turnoff. There was just a Kickstarter that, or I should say a second Kickstarter that was completed that's going to include AIs that you can go against, so I'm really excited for that. That's why I put this as number 2, because once you do get that specific AI, I think this game is going to shine in solo mode. Scythe, designed by Jamie Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games, is a 1 to 5 player competitive engine building game set in an alternate history 1920s period. In the solo game, you will play one of the 5+ factions of the Eastern European countries who are attempting to earn their fortune and stake in the land around the mysterious factory. You will go up against at least one AI, although you can play with more than one if you're brave enough, competing to earn the most victory points and win the game. You will control workers who will help you generate resources and will use those resources to build mechs, to protect your land, and complete objectives for victory points. If you can score more victory points than the AIs you play against, you win the game. I enjoy this game solo because there is an awesome AI that was made by the Morton team. Yeah, I love just how you can play even with more than one if you want, and I can't wait to try that, and I'm hoping to do a video of myself against 2 AIs if I can swing it. I really like how, although this is a Euro game at heart, there's also combat. I think this is one of the only ones on my list that you can actually do combat against the AI, and I really think how the combat is done is quite cool. As you're playing the game, even though there's lots of depth, there are only 3 or 4 actions that you can take, so it limits the amount of options, makes it easier for you to make decisions. Yet, the fun part is when you make those decisions, which things do you want to do to best get yourself ready to score points. The entire package of the game is simply gorgeous. From the board, to the components, to the mechs, I could stare at this game all day and be happy just looking at it. I do feel like the game still provides you with a good puzzle, but it does feel less puzzly and more about a race against the AI to the finish line, and I really like that. Now, this game may not be for you if you're thinking that all it is combat, because that's not really the main part of the game. Make sure that you understand that overall this game is still an economic Euro, just with some cool mechs and some cool combat elements. And finally, the game itself can be difficult, and although there are easy modes, if you're looking to win right away, this game might not be for you. So there you have it. That is my top 10. Sorry I didn't have a video about Scythe, actually. It's just pictures with them moving around. I was going to do that, but then we ended up selling our house, and then our buyers backed out, so I had to get the house all ready to put back up. Oh my gosh, that sucks, by the way. So I'm hoping by the time this video goes live, I have another buyer. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so I just didn't have enough time before I could get this out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'm really curious what your guys' top 10 solo Euros are. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you at the next stop.